When you find the business opportunities to impact the world, when you make the decision to change, it's on. Hey everyone, you are listening to It's On Podcast. My name is Calvin Noel. I am the VP of Creative Services here at Anthem Republic. We are a digital agency located in Franklin, Tennessee, that's right outside of Nashville. And today's topic is about diversity in advertising. Being an African-American male in the advertising industry, I've seen a lot that is taking place right now as far as solutions for it, but also there is a big gap in this world right now. And so we are looking for solutions to be able to encourage other agencies to take steps toward incorporating diversity and inclusion in their daily practices. So I went to Texas. I went to the University of Texas in Austin to speak with Minette Drumright, and she is a professor at the University of Texas Austin at the Stan Richards School of Public Relations and Advertising. And so I sat down with her and three of the students, and they were all diverse of different races, and we had a great conversation about this topic. And the thing that I love great about Minette is that she's very enlightened, and the school itself has a lot of intentionality around this topic. And it's not just something that they put on their website, it's actually something that they practice. So it's something that they teach their students, and they do research around these topics. And I really think it's impactful. And for those of you that are in business, this will at least begin the topic of conversation for you. And it's very insightful. I really left feeling more and more passionate about it. And we at Anthem Republic believe in this wholeheartedly. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy it. Once again, this is Minette Drumright, and we are talking about diversity in advertising. So welcome, Minette. Thank you for being a part of It's On Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you, Calvin.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking your time. I just want to jump right in because I'm really excited to talk to you today. And for those listening, I discovered Minette online as I was researching the University of Texas at Austin's advertising school. And so I wanted you to just give us a little bit of history about your time here and how you got to be a part of it.
Well, I've been here for over 20 years, and it's been a lot of fun because this is a great department of advertising and public relations, which became a school several years ago when the Richards Group made a substantial contribution when Stan Richards did, and we are now the Stan Richards School of Advertising and Public Relations.
That's awesome. Now, I was researching that this is one of the top advertising schools in the country. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how did they discover that? Is it just because of your placement of students?
There are various ways of ranking, and there are various ranking groups. And I understand they look not just at where our students go, but at our curriculum, how we educate students, and that sort of thing.
Great. And then what is your main concentration or focus or department that you teach?
Well, I typically teach courses related to advertising ethics and law, advertising and public relations for nonprofit organizations, and also leadership and communication.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. And we're also here with a few students.
My name is Christina, and I'm studying International Relations and Global Studies, and I'm a junior at UT.
Hey, I'm Rebecca. I'm a junior, and I'm studying creative advertising.
Hi, my name's Tamia. I'm an international business major, and I'm a third year.
Awesome. Well, we are glad to have you, and I already love the feel and the look of this group. It's very diverse for those that are listening. We have all ethnic races and backgrounds here today. And so as far as ethics, can you just explain to the listener that's listening that doesn't know what advertising ethics are?
Sure. Well, it's trying to use advertising in responsible, ethical ways. It often has two components. One is the message and the ethics of the message, the effects the message has on people, and that's where colorism comes into play. But it also encompasses the business part of advertising, how you deal with clients, billing, all those sorts of things. So it's got those two dimensions.
Gotcha. And now, is there a set of rules in advertising ethics that people follow with agencies, or is there something that's just you just know about it?
Well, there are some agencies that have codes, and we certainly encourage agencies to create codes that really, encapsulate their ethics and their standards and their values. And some agencies do, others don't. We oftentimes talk about the tendency that all of us can have to have what we call moral myopia, where the ethical issues just don't come clearly into focus. And I think that can happen very easily in advertising because there are many deadlines. We're distracted with trying to do breakthrough work. So a part of what we try to do when we teach advertising ethics is get students to really focus on the ethical issues, to see things like colorism that can just be off the radar, and to start talking about them. There's a tendency, not just in advertising, but in other fields, for people to have what we call moral muteness, where they just don't talk about ethical issues.
And why is that?
Well, sometimes there are all kinds of rationalizations. Sometimes they think that people will think that they're not savvy as business people if they're bringing these up. So there are all kinds of reasons they might not talk about it. Sometimes it's because they don't see the ethical issues clearly.
Right.
So you can see how moral myopia and moral muteness can reinforce each other. You don't see the ethical issues clearly, so you don't talk about them. You don't talk about them, so you're not really focusing on them and not really addressing them. And so a lot of people who don't intend to do anything wrong can end up doing some things that they're not happy about when they see the effects.
So how does an agency or a business begin to talk about these things, the myopia or the muteness? How do they begin to take action on that in their company?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with leaders, and leaders actually articulating what the standards are, leaders rewarding people who do ethical, responsible things and making that visible and really calling out examples of work that is not responsible and ethical or practices that aren't responsible and ethical. And then there are all kinds of educational approaches, all kinds of ways to have seminars or workshops that help people think about issues like, for example, colorism and its potentially negative effects. And sometimes some relatively simple changes can be instituted that have a dramatic difference.
Well, let's jump right into the thing on colorism. I think that's a great segue. How would you define colorism?
Well, I define colorism as internalized racism, where people who are dark would prefer to be lighter and would prefer to have more Caucasian-like features, and a situation in which people who are lighter or white also buy into that myth that people are more attractive or more socially acceptable if they have a lighter skin or more Caucasian-like features. And I think this is not really on the radar of a lot of white people.
Right. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's an example of moral myopia. It's just not been brought into conversation, which is moral muteness, so they're just not thinking about it or focusing on it. There's a real tendency to follow the status quo. And I think most of us would probably say the status quo in advertising now is to have people of color who look more Caucasian-like.
Right.
And to put those kinds of models in ads.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. Growing up, I've been around I'm an African American, but I've been around a lot of Caucasians, and it was always taught in home that you had to be more Caucasian to be accepted. It would always be that where Black people would have to almost give 200% to be considered equal to a white person's 100%. And if I gave 150, then I wasn't considered equal. And I could be working harder than them, but I feel like I just have to do extra. And it's also, even I learned this in business, I've really come to a place where I just accept who I am, the way I am, my personality. But it's also sometimes where you feel like when you're around Caucasians that you need to talk like them, or you can have an accent, or you have to be just like them, for better terms.
Which is a form of racism.
Yeah, which is a form of racism. And I think what excited me about talking about this is because I really have a passion for diversity in advertising, but it's also it's a difficult subject because I feel like a lot of people that initiate these diversity initiatives or movements are always people of color, whereas it's just great to find people that are the majority that have an intentionality, is what I like to say. There's an intentionality, and I think it really starts there. Do you agree with businesses or leaders being intentional as it relates to diversity?
Absolutely. And one thing you will find on our faculty is those type of people. I have been thrilled with the response of our faculty to this project. And with the support, I'll be happy to elaborate on that. But I think what you see here in the Richard School is a whole group of allies who are white, that are really, really trying to address these problems. And of course, we have African American and Asian faculty as well. We have Hispanic faculty, but the majority is white.
Well,
and
that's awesome, because
without those allies, we're not going to make the progress that we need to make at the pace we want to make it.
Well, it's just a great example of how I wish the world could be as far as leadership. It's not that you have to have it all figured out, but what I think made me come all the way from Nashville to this was just because when you see intentionality from a leadership perspective, it really does speak. Everything speaks, And so when I look at the website and I just see intentionality, I see different color students, and it's not just, for tokenism's sake, but you can just really tell that this is something that they practice on the regular. And I just think it's a really, really great initiative that you guys are doing. And what's been the response globally, or with the students? Maybe we can get you guys' perspective since you're here as it relates to colorism. What's been your experience? And maybe just for those that can't see it, just describe what nationality you are as well.
I'm Tamia, and I'm African American. I know that, I've struggled with my own, because I feel like colorism has layers, right? Everyone experiences it in a different way, and I know that I experienced it through my hair, and so going natural and growing up and having your own mother and father, critique your hair in the natural state that it was, and getting perms, and then having to find my own voice, and then being like, this is my hair, it grows out of my head, why isn't it accepted? I'm gonna learn how to accept it. Being a part of the natural hair movement, that for me was my take on colorism, and just how I can sort of push it away or reinforce my own form of beauty and identity by myself. Yeah. And then and so for me, I really thought this colorism is something that I always talk about with women, especially women of color. We deal with it so frequently, especially darker skinned women of color. And so it's something, and colorism takes a form in features on your face, hair, skin color, body shape, all that type of things. And so it's just it's not a one size fit all. And then, I think my other teammates will elaborate on there.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm also, or not also, but I'm Asian American, and my parents are immigrants from Taiwan. And I think for me, I was fortunate in the sense that I didn't really struggle with colorism with wanting lighter features with my hair or skin bleaching products. But I think for me, I saw it in my parents growing up where even when it was really hot outside, they would wear a lot of thick layers just so they wouldn't get darker. And I think for me, their story is different because since in Taiwan, they're poor, they were farmers. And so for them, there is that social stigma of okay, if you were darker, then it's associated with being a farmer, and that way you're poor. And so I think for me, how it boils down for me is it's all about representation in media, because I think for me growing up, not really seeing a lot of representation in Asians or different minorities in the creative field really influenced me, because even for my parents, they don't really get my major right now. They're every time I go home, they're still trying to convince me to go to engineering, and I get that because for them money is a huge deal, and for them to come here being immigrants, money is stability and all of that. And so there's a lot of layers to that where there's cultural barriers and language barriers, but that's one thing. And also another, just growing up in a mostly Caucasian high school, wanting to feel, I guess, adapting to that as a survival mode of being whiter was also on my mind. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina, and I'm Korean American. My experience with colorism is actually with plastic surgery, and the cosmetic surgery industry in Korea is a really big thing, and it's something that my cousins and a lot of other family members are engaged with. I mean, just bluntly put, like, I have a lot of cousins who have their nose chiseled down to look more Caucasian or have double eyelid surgery. And so when I was really little, my mom told me that my brother and I held hands. We walked in the living room. We were like, we both want to get double eyelid surgery. We want to have bigger eyes. We see it in K-dramas, you know, all the K-pop stars. And I think I was lucky enough that my mom never pressured me into subscribe to something like that. She was always very supportive of my own natural features. And but I think it was a lot of the influence from pressure on myself and then pressure to wanting to fit in. And also just other family members. My grandpa actually offered to pay for my plastic surgery after high school. And for him, you know, it was well-intentioned, but so he thought that it was something that I desired. But it was pretty shocking to have your own grandfather just kind of give you that idea that you needed plastic surgery.
Wow. You know, and it just seems like a lot of it is, you know, how our family, our parents were raised, and they pushed that down on us. So my question to you, Minette, is what are some of the things that you guys are doing as it relates to colorism? Because I love the topic, but you guys have some initiatives that you're doing, right?
The first thing we do is talk about this in our classes. We talk about it in the ethics classes. We talk about it in the consumer psychology classes and in other classes as well. But the really cool stuff has been initiated by these students who heard about a new award. It's called the President's Award for Global Learning, where groups of 4 students from different majors, they have to be interdisciplinary, get to envision something they'd like to do to bring about positive change in some other part of the world.
Nice.
And they compete. And there's a winner in each region. And that team gets to go to the region, to the place they propose to go, and conduct a study with the understanding they'll come back and somehow enrich our campus. And so this group got together at one of the mixers that the international office has, and they decided they wanted to study colorism, so it was completely initiated by them.
Awesome.
Rebecca, who's an advertising student, came to me because of having heard about this, and she knew we discussed it in my class. And I was really moved when she said, "Do you want to be a part of this?" because I had heard testimonies of our young women students talking about how they felt when they were compared to these media standards of beauty for minorities.
Well, when they talk about it, and I'm just wondering, when you talk about it in classes, is there like an emotional response from the students? Because even just talking about it right now, you just feel this frustration or pain, not necessarily from them, but just as a global whole. You know, you just kind of feel it's very emotional to talk about.
It's heart-wrenching, both in my class, and we have a peer observation program where we go to watch other people. And when I was recently in a consumer psychology class taught by one of my colleagues, the students, particularly the women students, were giving these testimonies that just break your heart to hear them, as these do.
Wow.
So I was really, because of that experience, I was really moved when these students said, "We'd like to study this. Let's think about what we could do."
So the plan is for you guys, have you started studying it already, or you're going to study it over?
I would say they have certainly started studying already, because from March through October, they were going through various phases of the competition where they had to write proposals, do presentations, revise, and they just found out in October that they won for Africa and will go to Ghana, to University of Ghana.
Nice.
But then in the spring, they'll have a course, just the 4 of them with 3 professors, pretty good professor-student ratio.
Yes.
And they'll study colorism at University of Texas here during that. And then they'll be in Ghana for 10 weeks where they'll actually get credit for 2 summer courses, and they will do the same research there, in-depth interviews with young women, understanding what the media environment looks like, the other influences in the retail and kind of overall culture that reinforce colorism. So they'll be able to do the same study at University of Texas and University of Ghana, working with young University of Ghana women there from the social work school. We have a partner there. And then they will come back. They will, of course, write papers, do presentations, but they'll come back and brief two of our most senior groups of advertising and PR students. And those students will take this information from these 4 students and create campaigns designed to mitigate the effects of colorism at University of Ghana and here, with student affairs administrators, both places, serving as the clients. These students will serve as resources and briefers. And then the students, there are 6 teams in each class, and they'll spend the whole semester making proposals for campaigns that will lessen the effects of colorism. And concurrently, advertising and PR graduate students in a research class will be creating pre-test and post-test surveys. So then in spring of 2020, both at University of Texas and University of Ghana, there will be a pre-test to survey people's attitudes, the campaigns selected by the administrators, and then the post-test, and then advertising and PR research students will interpret the data and see if there's been change. So we'll have a number of our classes, at least 4 of our classes, exposed in the actual project itself, and then another class is tracking the students to create communication stories for our websites. So we'll have altogether at least 5 classes of students, so that will get people deeply engaged in understanding the issues.
Well, that's huge. I mean, just hearing about it, it's like, man, for a university to approach it this way, I think it's going to have a great impact on the global advertising industry. Just from my perspective, I'm already, and I know people that I work with, they love to learn about this topic. Have you ever seen the one video? It was on colorism. It was a bunch of 3 to 4 year olds, and they were white and black, and they had to basically look at different baby dolls and different shades of baby dolls, and they had to say whether it was good or bad. And so every time they got to the dark baby doll, the black children and the white children and the Asian children, everyone would say that the dark baby was bad or considered evil or whatever. And have you seen that? Can you share what your thoughts are on that?
Well, that is a classic study that has been repeated. One of the faculty advisors, I'm one of 3, and one of them is Dr. Kevin Coakley in the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies, and he specializes on those issues of identity among African Americans and people of color. And so he will be teaching, along with the other 2 of us, the spring course and the summer course on those topics, and that is, just breaks your heart.
Yeah, it really
does.
It's
a very blunt and visible manifestation of this.
The thing is, I feel like the advertising community has played a role with the media and television to shape the perception of what that is. And so for years, you just get trained that, your hair can't, if you want to be accepted, it has to be straight, or, any commercial that's out there. And so how do you feel this topic, the advertising agency community, the advertising industry, what do you think that they could be doing to help this? I know you're doing the colorism thing, but what's been your experience with advertising agencies trying to adopt this? Because there isn't a lot of diversity in advertising at all, and it's absolutely shocking to me. And I feel, being an African American in an advertising industry, I definitely feel like, hey, where's everybody? And I wanted to get your perspective on how do you see businesses trying to provide solutions for this?
Well, I think that one solution is to get more minorities into the advertising industry and into the pipeline. And you'll be talking to Leanne Kaylor about what we're doing along those lines. But I think another, as you alluded to earlier, you've got to have the white people as allies, and you've got to have those folks changing their conception of beauty in advertising and in business more generally. Our partner at University of Ghana tells us colorism is most pronounced among professional and pre-professional women who feel like they need to look a certain way, a certain Caucasian type way, in order to be acceptable in business. So the values of the business culture more generally need to change, and I think advertising can be a huge lever along those lines by the way it portrays people in ads, people who are attractive.
Do you see agencies reaching out to learn more about this, or is it something that, we still have to knock on their door and say, hey, you need to be thinking about this?
My impression is we need to be knocking on the door.
Okay.
And, the students are going to be doing research. We hope to publish the research in both academic journals and in non-academic kinds of publications. And they'll be giving talks, and they'll be, spreading the word through not just these two campaigns, but also through other sorts of writing. And we hope these campaigns that will be created by the students might be templates or patterns that can be used in many places and other places. And I think there's a real role for universities because we have a huge impact on young people.
Yes.
And I'm so thrilled that the major leaders in the university picked this project because there was stiff competition for Africa. And the two finalists for Africa were clean water and colorism. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be hard to beat clean water.
Yeah.
But these students did.
Wow. Congratulations to you guys. You guys are rock stars.
So thanks to our administration and for the people picking the winners to recognize that this is an issue that needs to be elevated.
Yeah.
I think it's not really on the agenda the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
But people like you are helping us through your podcast
and through
other approaches.
I think, one of our core values is empathy at our agency. And we just believe in standing in other people's shoes just to learn their perspective. I think that makes you a better business. And so our founder just is really big on empathy. And so we have, a Filipino employee, myself, and just there's a lot of intentionality, which is the thing that I love about where I work. But I've just noticed outside of it, and different people that I know in advertising, it's just not there. It's just not happening. And it's not just people in the advertising industry. It's business as a whole. But, I have been seeing, like on LinkedIn, a lot of businesses are hiring diversity inclusion specialists to kind of run their programs. And have you seen that a lot too? Like a lot of big brands are hiring those people?
They're talking about how it's important not just to their moral fiber, but to their business success. And these are big companies. One thing that's interesting is that colleges at UT are now starting to have diversity and inclusion associate deans. We have a diversity inclusion office at the university level, but now we're getting these folks to lead the charge in a more intentional way. I think intentional is the right word.
Yes.
And what intentionality does is it puts this topic on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I just think it's been below the agenda.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who would like to be allies or who would be inclined to be aren't thinking about it.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of pushback just being a Caucasian female, being a voice to talk about this? Do you get pushback from peers of like maybe why is this so important? I just see everybody. I don't see color. People say that a lot. Like, I don't see color. And I'm like, no, you do see color. But what's your thoughts as your peers, your Caucasian peers? Do you think that this is an easy topic to talk to them about, or is it more?
Well, I think there are always sensitivities when you talk about race, because I think it is without a doubt the hardest topic for our society, bar none, and has been for years and years. So there are always sensitivities. But I find that there are a lot of people, when you kind of help them see their implicit biases, like about colorism, if you can raise that to a conscious level, they say, I don't want to be that way. Mm-hmm. And especially in an academic community when we're trying to instill values in leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I have found people in the academic community to
supportive,
be open and supportive.
That's great.
And but again, I think this is one of those topics that's been kind of below the conscious level of a lot of people.
I agree.
And so it's just raising it, putting it on the agenda, getting people talking about it and thinking about it.
Yes, exactly. That's great. And I would say for you students, how does this feel for you moving forward? Does it excite you? Are you any hopes that you have learning from this project?
I would say that this really excites me. I know that I don't think a lot of minorities even know about colorism.
Right.
To be
honest.
honest.
Yes.
So the conversation is not being had within the community because we're not even realizing what we're perpetuating amongst ourselves.
Right.
And so for me, I think this was something that I've always had a huge passion about, and to be able to do something long term or to this level of being able to impact people is something that I'm very excited about. I am a business major, and I typically don't feel like I have a sector in business because of my ethnicity or because of the things that I find important. And so just paving a way for myself in terms of, business ethics and the representation that we deserve to have within all, sectors of business and the world. And so I think that this is a really awesome opportunity for that.
Awesome. How about you?
I think for me, to what Tamia was saying, where it's not really on people's minds, it's almost like people don't know what the words are for it to describe it. Because I see my friends that are Korean that go to Korea and they do plastic eye surgery and come back with double eyelids. And that really breaks my heart because it's why do you feel like you need to change? You're so beautiful and everything. I think just for me, that really breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And so empathizing with that and also talking with my other friends about it and hearing their backstories of how they've had to change when they were younger, changing the camera setting to be lighter, whenever they take pictures and things like that, and just how normalized it is was really heart-wrenching for me. But I think on a deeper level, for me, it really excites me because all of this is about representation, right? And so I think for me, especially having that struggle of being an Asian American in the creative field and having parents that are immigrants that don't understand it, having more representation of, hey, diversity is really important. And all these initiative of getting more diverse people in this creative field is really, it resonates with me a lot because I see a lot of my friends that are so talented in art or just the creative field, but they choose science or the STEM and all of that route because their parents push them towards it, or they don't think that they can make it, even though they have this natural gift, talent in them. And so for me, that's do it, you. And it's just crazy because a lot of the people that I've seen switch into the creative field from the STEM or the STEM route or the medical field or something else that's stereotypically pushed onto them, it really excites me because it's I know you're doing this for yourself. I know that you're finding something that you love and you're pursuing it. Yes. And that really excites me.
That's great. How about you?
Man, I just have so many thoughts going around in my mind. But I think one thing that stands out to me is that, colorism and the social issue and this mental health concern is something that will always keep learning. The conversation never ends because, again, it does affect Tamia differently than it does Rebecca and than it does me. I mean, when we were talking, I just remembered when I was in middle school and I used to cut out tape and put it on my eyelids so I could have double eyelids.
Wow.
And I mean, that was just something that subliminally consumed my mind. And so I think this is really exciting for me because the best way to learn about this issue is by having these conversations with other people and hearing their testimonies and then understanding the intersectionality of how it'll affect your career, how it'll affect your academic performance, what opportunities you might even pursue because of how you perceive yourself and your environment. So.
Well, I just want to thank you, ladies, for being a part of this because I just want to say you guys are really rock stars. I'm serious. I know I joke. You don't know my personality that well, but I like to have fun. But I really do think that you guys are doing something that will impact the entire world. I really do believe that this project, like I said, it just hit me. and I was like, man, I gotta go over to this university to find out about this colorism thing, because I've been trying to figure out, how do you help people? How do you help businesses? How do you help your churches, or any and everything? I just feel like, and it just seems like racism, and it's just starting to kind of increase a little bit more lately. And it's just, the climate is just real sensitive. And so I just want to encourage you, and I just appreciate you guys being here. And I can't wait to follow and see what happens with this. And for you, Manette, is there any closing thoughts that you have for the listener around this topic or ethics, anything from you?
I think this is a great example about how young people who could say, well, we're not quite prepared yet, we're not ready yet, can really take the initiative, take the responsibility, and lead positive change, because none of this would be happening without them.
Right.
And the other thought I had is, one of the things we talk about in advertising ethics is, how can you have moral imagination? And that is, how can you figure a way to be both ethical and responsible and successful? And I think this project will do a lot to bring about more moral imagination in advertising, in communication, and in the larger business community. And we don't know what the solutions will be yet. But because of we have some ideas, but I think their research, along with the faculty who will be interacting with them, and the graduate student that will be helping them, I think that together, along with these classes that will be involved, we'll be able to come up with ways to have moral imagination that we haven't thought about yet, and that others haven't thought about yet. So that's our hope and our goal.
Well, I just thank you so much for allowing me to come to your campus and see everything, and just thank you once again. How can people stay in touch with the school, or if they ever wanted to get in contact with you guys regarding this topic, or other people with businesses, how can they learn from you and get more information?
Well, we'd be happy for them to email us, and you can go to utexas.edu, and you'll see a link to a directory, and look for Manette Drumright. Just search for me. Or you can also type in Stan Richards School of Advertising and PR into Google. There's a story on the website about these students and the whole team now, and there will be other students writing installments as time goes on following these folks.
We just recently bought a website. It's
Come
still
on,
being
website.
it's still
Plug
being
it. Come
built,
on, advertising
but
student.
I believe it's
The
what is
Color
it?
Complex.
www.thecolorcomplex.com.
Something like that.
Now, is it color COLOR or COLOUR?
No, COLOR.
Okay, got it.
It's yes. We just recently bought it. It's still being built, but it will be live.
Yes. Well, we'll make
That's
sure.
such a great idea. You can see why they've got an advertising student on the team.
Yes, see, you're brilliant. That's awesome.
That's even better.
Yes.
Even better.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. And once again, we really appreciate you guys for being here. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Calvin. We so appreciate you and the force for change that you are.
Awesome. Thank you.